Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Introduction to Digital Accessibility, Building and Maintaining Accessible Websites. Today's presentation is brought to you by the Buckles Technology Committee. I'm Lori Meske from the Johnson Public Library in Hackensack, and as a member of the committee, I'm here to introduce you to our special guest speaker, Thalia Kapica. Thalia is the Senior Accessible Web Technology Specialist at the University of Chicago's Center for Digital Accessibility and has worked in website design since 2007. I'm lucky enough to have been friends with Thalia since even before that. Just a couple of general notes before we get started with the presentation. First, we are recording today's session and it will be later shared with attendees along with a list of helpful resources from the presentation itself. Also, if you have any questions at any point during the presentation, please feel free to type them into the Q&A box as you have them. I'll be helping moderate the questions so we can get to as many as possible at the end of the presentation. Without any further ado, let's turn it over to Thalia.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. Welcome to Introduction to Digital Accessibility, Building and Maintaining Accessible Websites. My name is Thalia Kapica. I'm a Certified Professional in Accessibility Core Competencies, or CPAC, which is awarded by the International Association of Accessibility Professionals. I'm the Senior Accessible Web Technology Specialist at the University of Chicago in the Center for Digital Accessibility, where I perform website accessibility assessments and provide training and consults for the university community. I've been working with the CDA since January 2020. Before that, I was a web developer and designer for 15 years. I've also been known to moonlight in art and design. On the left, I have a photo of myself. I've got dark eyes and hair just below my chin dyed light green. If you're wondering why I've described the photo, I'm doing it for accessibility reasons. Anytime there's something visually important on the screen, I'm going to describe it verbally throughout the presentation. We'll get to why later. If you're interested in learning more about CPAC or want to get certified, you can check out the IAAP's website at accessibilityassociation.org. I have it on good authority that librarians are fans of a table of contents, so I'm just going to give a quick overview of what we're going to cover today. To start, we're going to go over some statistics and then rethink what we mean when we say disability. We'll talk about why it matters and define accessibility, followed by a summary of how people with disabilities use websites. We're then going to talk about some of the top things to keep in mind when building an accessible website. This section is going to get a bit dense, so please bear with me. We'll take a quick breather at the end of it and do a recap. Once we've discussed some of those key considerations, we'll talk about how to apply them to an existing website, how you can test your website for issues, and what resources you can use to help you remediate them. If we have enough time, I'll pop out of the slideshow and give you a quick screen reader demo, and then we'll come back to wrap it all up with some time at the end for questions. Questions. Okay, so before we get into building or remediating anything, let's start off by going over some disability statistics. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 26%, or 1 in 4 adults in the United States, has a disability. Now think about that for a sec. That's a quarter of the adult population. In 2020, that was approximately 64 million people. All stats and quotes on the next two slides are from the CDC's website. Disabilities aren't uniformly distributed throughout populations. In fact, they're especially common in these groups. 2 in 5 adults aged 65 and over have a disability. 1 in 4 women have a disability. And 2 in 5 non-Hispanic American Indians/Alaskan Natives have a disability. If your library is serving any of these populations, it's worth keeping in mind that the prevalence of disabilities in your communities might be higher than you realize. The CDC goes on to state that out of people with a disability, 13.7%, or approximately 30.7 million people estimated in 2020, have a mobility disability with serious difficulty walking or climbing stairs. 10.8%, or approximately 26.5 million people, have a cognitive disability with serious difficulty concentrating, remembering, or making decisions. 6.8%, or about 16.3 million people, have an independent living disability with difficulty doing errands alone. 5.9%, or about 16.1 million, are deaf or who have serious difficulty hearing. 4.6%, or about 12.7 million, have a vision disability with blindness or serious difficulty seeing even when wearing glasses. and 3.6%, or approximately 8.1 million, have a self-care disability with difficulty dressing or bathing. That's a lot of people. If you're interested in exploring the numbers, the CDC has a neat tool called the Disability and Health Data System, available at dhds.cdc.gov, where you can break down disability statistics by the country or by state. Spoilers, there are about 1.4 million people in New Jersey who have a disability. Since we're here to talk about websites, let's talk about what sort of disabilities can affect how a user interacts with a website or digital application. Some disability categories that can affect digital use include auditory, such as deafness or hard of hearing; cognitive, like dyslexia, attention deficit disorder, and learning disabilities; motor control, such as arthritis or muscular dystrophy; neurological, like epilepsy and migraines; speech impairment; and visual, blind, visually impaired, or colorblind. And also, when we talk about disabilities, often people will think of permanent disabilities, people who are deaf or blind or who have paraplegia. But not all disabilities are permanent, and they should be included in the conversation. Even though these aren't part of the statistics I just shared, let's rethink what we mean by disability. Over the next few slides, I'm going to show you how disability is actually a much broader definition than you might think, and that when you're designing with accessibility in mind, you're actually designing for everybody. Disabilities can be permanent, temporary, or situational. And what do I mean by that? I'm going to give you some examples. Some of these have been adapted from a document published by Indiana University, and the decorative icons I'm using are courtesy of Font Awesome. Let's start with visual disabilities. When we say someone has a visual disability, we could mean a person who's blind, of course. This is a permanent disability. But we could also be talking about a person who goes in for eye surgery. Normally their vision is pretty good, but right now, while they're recovering, they have either limited or no visual ability. They'll regain their vision in a few days, but for the moment, they have a temporary visual disability. How about situational? Well, have you ever tried to look at your phone on a bright sunny day and been unable to read what's on the screen because of the glare? This is what we call a situational disability or impairment. The bright sunlight is creating a condition that's affecting your ability to see clearly, and so you have a situational visual impairment. Similarly, when we talk about someone who has a hearing disability, we could be talking about someone who's deaf. Maybe they use a hearing aid, or maybe they have no hearing at all. This is a permanent disability. But we could also be talking about someone who has an ear infection. The infection is affecting their ability to hear clearly, or maybe even at all. And with proper treatment and medication, the infection will clear up, and the person's hearing will return. But until their hearing returns, they have a temporary disability. Let's also imagine someone who generally has very good hearing. They're relaxing at home, trying to catch up on the latest episode of their favorite TV show, but just outside their window there's loud construction. That jackhammering is making it impossible to hear what's going on in the show. This person has a situational hearing impairment, and I hope the jackhammering stops soon because no one enjoys ongoing construction. When we talk about motor disabilities, particularly ones that affect computer use, we could be talking about a person who is born with one arm. This person has a permanent disability. A person who's broken their arm is similarly affected. Normally, they have a full range of motion with both arms, but right now, one is in a cast and it hurts to move it. This person is now working on a computer one-handed. They have a temporary disability until they regain the use of their arm over time and through physical therapy. But what about someone who's holding a baby? They also have limited use of their hands and arms. Maybe they're able to juggle the baby a bit, hunt and peck on their keyboard with one hand while the other holds the baby in their lap. But they don't have full mobility of both arms and hands. This person has a situational impairment and won't be able to type easily on a keyboard until it's time for baby's nap. Finally, let's talk about someone who has a cognitive disability. This could mean someone who has attention deficit disorder, which is permanent. What about a person with a concussion? They might have headaches, blurred vision, or poor memory and concentration. In other words, they have a temporary cognitive disability. With proper rest and management, they'll recover from their injury over time. And speaking of headaches or poor concentration, you might not think of yourself as having a disability when you're distracted, but it can affect you in the same way. Have you ever tried to have an online meeting while you're working from home and the kids are running around the house playing or they're asking when it's time for lunch? It can be hard to focus on your work with the same level of concentration and attention as someone in a less distracting environment. A person who's distracted by their surroundings has a situational cognitive impairment. Keep in mind also that disabilities can be invisible, meaning it's impossible to know whether someone has a disability unless they disclose that information to you. Cognitive disabilities are often a good example of this, but it's also true of many other disabilities. Accessible parking spaces, for example, aren't just for people who use wheelchairs. They're also for people with chronic pain who need to take frequent rests from walking. Okay, we know the numbers and we've rethought disability, but why does it matter? Well, it matters because we can do something about it. We can make our digital content accessible, and we want to make it accessible because it's the right thing to do. Inaccessible digital content can be a barrier to participation in the same way as physical barriers, like stairs to a building, can prevent entry for some people. Libraries help foster community engagement, and everyone in your community deserves to be included. When roughly a quarter of your audience potentially has a disability of some kind, the right thing to do is to make your content as accessible to them as you can. But also, it's the law. Websites are considered places of public accommodation and are covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. Per ADA.gov, the Americans with Disabilities Act applies to state and local governments under Title II and businesses that are open to the public under Title III. For a great overview of your legal obligations, check out guidance on web accessibility and the ADA, available at beta.ada.gov/resources/web-guidance. So now we know why it matters and we want to be accessible, but what does that actually mean in practice? First, let's start by defining accessibility. Accessibility means a product, service, place, or website can be used by a wide range of people, regardless of age, disability, assistive tools or technology in use, or other factors. When we talk about digital accessibility, we're referring specifically to things like websites, software, apps, and digital documents like Word docs, PDFs, slideshow presentations, emails, and so on. You might also hear accessibility referred to as ally. The word is written A11Y and is derived from replacing the middle 11 letters of the word accessibility with the number 11. So how do we measure accessibility? Enter the World Wide Web Consortium, also known as W3C, Web Accessibility Initiative, or WAI. W3C develop international standards for HTML, CSS, and other web technology. The Web Accessibility Initiative focuses on accessibility materials, and they've published their recommendations called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. These are referred to as WCAG. I know we've got a lot of acronyms here, but for the purposes of this presentation, WCAG is the one to remember. These are guidelines designed to make digital content more accessible for people with disabilities and apply to websites, applications, and other digital content. WCAG is an international standard. Some quick history for you. WCAG 1.0 became a recommendation in 1999. In late 2008, they recommended WCAG 2.0. Currently, we're on 2.1, which was recommended in 2018, but keep an eye out for 2.2. It's currently in the candidate recommendation stage, and it could be released as early as the end of this year. Work has also already begun on WCAG 3, which is currently in an incomplete working draft state. So right now, the industry standard is WCAG 2.1. For legal purposes, even though ADA doesn't specify technical standards, the Department of Justice frequently accepts WCAG 2.1 as a measurement of accessibility. There are 78 success criteria in WCAG 2.1. Each criterion has a conformance level of A, AA, or AAA. Each higher level includes the set of criteria as the prior level. AA includes A, and AAA contains AA. Level A is the minimum level of compliance and covers the broadest audience, but barriers will still exist for people with disabilities. AA is more accessible to more people and will work with the most assistive technology out there. AAA is the strictest and is the hardest to achieve. Most organizations aim for AA, which is the level W3 itself recommends for most organizations. Success criteria are organized into 4 principles called POUR, which stands for perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Perceivable means that a user must be able to perceive all information presented in some way according to their senses. Information cannot be hidden from all senses. If someone is unable to hear, they can read the content, such as with captions on a video. If a user has low vision or is colorblind, there's enough contrast and other visual identifiers to distinguish elements from one another. Operable refers to interface components and navigation. A user must be able to navigate digital content without being required to interact with it in ways the user cannot do. If an element can be interacted with using a mouse, it can also be accessed using a keyboard. If an interaction has a timer, there's a way for a user to extend the time if they need it. If there's moving content, a user can stop or pause it. And if that content has flashes, it doesn't cause seizures. Understandable means a user must be able to understand the content and how an interface is meant to be operated. This covers things like the language of a page being programmatically specified so that screen readers can read it accurately, that navigation and layouts are predictable and consistent, and that errors on forms are clear and instructive. Robust means the content must be interpretable by a wide range of user agents, i.e. phones, applications, browsers, and so on, and including assistive technologies, and that your content stays accessible as user agents advance and evolve. You can find the entire WCAG 2.1 documentation at www.w3.org/tr/WCAG21. Now, by this point, I'm sure you're all wondering how to put all this information into practice, and I will get to that in just a minute. But first, we should talk about how people with disabilities actually use websites. Assistive technology refers to the kinds of devices designed to help users with disabilities operate websites. Some of these technologies are built right into your hardware, browser, or operating system, like keyboards without a mouse, zooming in the browser or using magnification software, or use of a screen reader, some of which are available in the operating system. Other devices people use are refreshable Braille keyboards, eye tracking technology, voice recognition software, alternate pointers, such as head pointers and mouth sticks. Now, a head pointer is a long wand-like stylus that allows a user to use touch screens through head movements. And similarly, a mouth stick is a wand operated by the mouth that allows a user to type on a keyboard or use a touchscreen. They also use sip and puff or SNP devices. An SNP is a special straw or tube that allows users to input different types of commands directly into a device by either sipping or sucking in, or puffing or breathing out. Here's a photo of a Braille keyboard depicting a person's fingers resting on top of the pins at the start of the line. Refreshable Braille keyboards operate by dynamically raising and lowering individual pins to form Braille letters representing content on a computer. When the user reaches the end of the line, they can send a signal back to the computer to move to the next line, and then move their hands back to the beginning of the keyboard to continue reading. Okay, we made it. Building an accessible website. The best time to make your website accessible is from the start, during the design phase. When you build accessibility into the process, you spend less time, money, and effort fixing mistakes later. Design accessibly, build accessibly, and test as you build. Think of accessibility issues like bugs. If you have an accessibility issue with your website, you have a bug, and it should be fixed. From what I understand, we've got a pretty broad audience here. Some of you code, some of you work with content management systems, and some of you are content creators. It's a little difficult to break down tips by role, especially since what's under whose authorship can depend on how your website is set up, but it's helpful to understand how all of these elements fit together, even if it's not something you yourself have direct control over. The first few slides in this section are going to be a bit technical, but I'll bring it back to content creation and editing in just a bit. With that said, here are the top things to keep in mind. First and foremost, write well-formed HTML. This is largely for the coders out there, but if you're a content creator, there are things you can do to help with this too. If you're using a WYSIWYG editor, which is the interface you use to edit your content, this means using the available format options to structure your content. Behind the scenes, the WYSIWYG is tagging your content with HTML, and it's important to do it correctly. This is because the key to accessible HTML is correct HTML. Browsers can be very permissive in how they render HTML, but while incorrect tags might look right, incorrect or inaccurate markup can cause confusion for some users, or even prevent your site from being navigated. So organize your pages with landmarks, like header, nav, main, and footer. And within those landmarks, be sure to use proper heading tags to organize your content, with only one H1 tag per page. You can have any number of heading levels 2 through 6, as long as they're nested and ordered correctly, and you avoid skipping heading levels. This will facilitate page navigation and comprehension. Make sure your tags are being used the way they're supposed to be, and organize your code to match the way it's supposed to look on the page instead of using styles to change object order or placement. And finally, declare the language of your content in the HTML element using the lang attribute, for example, en for English. You can also specify language on the paragraph tag or even on the word level with a span tag if you're changing it mid-document, like if you're quoting a passage in another language. Correct HTML will especially benefit screen reader users who can navigate a page by jumping from landmark to landmark and who can hear a list of all headings on a page and choose to jump to the section that interests them. Ensuring the language is specified will help the screen reader software know how to pronounce words correctly instead of having to guess, which can lead to hilarious pronunciation at best or unintelligible pronunciation at worst. Logical layouts also help keyboard-only users. They'll be expecting their focus to travel from top to bottom, left to right, and might otherwise get lost if the programmatic focus jumps erratically or unexpectedly around the page. Design responsibly. If you've never heard the term responsive design before, it means to design a website to be fluid so that it can adjust and rearrange elements according to viewport. In other words, elements will adjust their width or sometimes stack themselves to fit inside the browser, whether you're adjusting the browser's width on a computer or browsing the site on a mobile device. Test your content at different zoom levels. When you zoom in, does the text adjust and remain legible up to 200% zoom? Does all the content reflow without any loss of information up to 400% zoom? Does all the content remain on the screen without requiring horizontal scrolling? Horizontal scrolling can pose a challenge to some users and should be avoided, except for a few necessary exceptions, such as for maps or complex data tables, where the inability to scroll horizontally would result in a loss of functionality or understanding. When you design responsibly, content at 400% zoom in a browser is effectively equivalent to what a user will see on a mobile device. By allowing your content to resize and reflow, you benefit users with low vision, as well as users on mobile devices. Test your website by navigating it with only a keyboard. Anything you can do with a mouse, you must also be able to do with a keyboard. Pay special attention to what happens when you encounter something that's normally activated by hovering over it with your mouse. Submenus are really common examples. Are you able to open it up with a keyboard? Do you get the result you expect, or are you unable to open the menu at all without a mouse? For those of you who code, if an element is meant to be hidden and non-interactable, make sure it's also hidden from keyboard users and screen reader users. Sometimes when tabbing through a website, you'd be surprised at what visually hidden elements are reachable via keyboard. To test with a keyboard, you'll navigate primarily with the Tab key to move between interactive elements, like links and buttons. Activate those interactive elements with Return or Enter, which should behave the same as clicking on it, or use the spacebar to toggle an element's state, like if you want to pause or play something. Use the arrow keys to change values, such as in radio button groups, or to scroll the window up and down. You should always be able to exit a modal or menu or cancel an action with the Escape key. Ensuring your content works with the keyboard is beneficial to people who can't use a mouse, such a user who's blind or someone with limited hand mobility. Assistive technology often interacts with websites in a programmatic way that mimics the use of a keyboard. On the subject of keyboard testing, pay special attention to focus indicators. Things like links, buttons, custom interactive controls, and so on should have a visible focus indicator. By default, this is an outline around the element in focus. I've included a screenshot here of some placeholder text with two inline links. The first link has a default blue focus border around it. Do not deliberately hide or remove the default focus indicator on your website. For web developers, this can sometimes happen when a web framework or CMS has intentionally removed it as part of their style sheets, so keep an eye out for that. And coders, if you choose to customize the focus indicator, be mindful of maintaining good color contrast when a focused element appears in certain background colors. I'll talk more about color contrast in a moment. Focus indicators help keyboard-only users orient themselves on a website. Trying to keyboard navigate through a website without focus indicators is a quick way to get completely lost. They're also helpful to users with attention or short-term memory limitations who might get distracted or forget where they left off on a page. A focus indicator helps them reorient themselves. There we go. Okay, let's talk about color. There are two main rules for color. Don't use color alone, and use sufficient color contrast. Let's break that down a little. Color is fine to use. You can tell a story with color or convey a lot of information, but that shouldn't be the only way to convey information. Someone who's colorblind or who has low vision might not be able to tell a form field is required because the label is in red. You can still make the label red, but also include another means of identification, such as the word required or an asterisk. Similarly, a pie chart or bar graph might be impossible for someone to understand if the data isn't labeled. A color key is not enough for someone who can't perceive the colors. Include written labels or use shapes that clearly indicate what the parts of the graph represent. Ensure also that the colors you're using have sufficient contrast. Now, don't worry about memorizing the numbers. They're a measurement of the perceived difference of brightness between two colors, and I'll share some tools to help with this later on. For body text, you need a 4.5:1 contrast ratio with the color of the background. Links also have to follow the 4.5:1 ratio, but in addition, they must have a 3:1 contrast with surrounding text if they don't have a secondary identifier. Due to the extra contrast requirement, it's worth noting that color alone is almost never enough to distinguish a link from surrounding text as well as the background. There are actually only 26 web-safe color combinations that work with black text on a white background, and chances are they don't fit with your brand's color scheme. Because of this, links should have a secondary visual indicator, such as an underline, which is the browser default, or a styled border. If a secondary indicator is present, then you only need to worry about having sufficient contrast with the background. Moving on to content considerations. Always include a title tag in your head section. The title is what shows up in your browser tab or at the top of your browser window. Some WYSIWYGs let you customize this, and some do it for you based on the title of your page. If you can customize it, the document title should be ordered from most specific information to most general, so page title followed by site name. Titles are announced by screen readers first thing per page, and it can be repetitive or redundant to hear the site title first for every new page. Titles are also what appear on search engine results, so a specific and meaningful title will help drive traffic to your site. And back on the HTML slide, I talked about using headings to organize your content. If you're working with a WYSIWYG, make sure you're actually using heading options to format your headings and subheadings, and that you're not just making your text bold. These options usually look like a dropdown with the choices in large text called heading 1, heading 2, and so on. Conversely, don't use heading tags to make text bigger for visual impact. Headings have a purpose, and it's to help users understand your content. Make your content readable. Aim for a high school level of comprehension where appropriate or possible. This will especially help people with cognitive or learning disabilities, or people for whom English is not their primary language. Make sure to lay out your content in a logical way as well to help with this. Try also to use inclusive language and people-first language. People with disabilities are not defined by them. They are a person with a disability, not a disabled person or the disabled. Do not use underlines for anything other than links to avoid usability confusion, and use all caps only for acronyms where possible. All caps are fine to use sparingly, like for your menu items, as long as the coders style it with CSS and the word itself isn't typed with all caps into the code or WYSIWYG. All caps can be difficult for some people to read. Also, screen readers will often read capitalized words one letter at a time, and that can quickly become confusing if the text is not an acronym. Use meaningful link text. Avoid repetitive phrases like click here or read more. Screen reader users can jump between links on a page. Link text should be specific, clear, and ideally should match the title of the page to which you're linking so that a user can understand the destination out of context. This also helps users with low vision who have zoomed in on the text and will otherwise have to hunt around for context clues as to the link destination. Avoid using a URL for the link text, especially if the URL is long or contains a lot of non-word characters. Use the correct tags to make your lists. In a WYSIWYG, this means clicking on the little numbered or bulleted list icons instead of typing in 1, 2, 3 or using pictures in place of bullet points. For the coders, this means using UL tags for unordered lists and OL tags for ordered. Some assistive technologies allow users to jump from list to list. Screen readers announce ordered and unordered lists to the user, allowing the user to understand the relationship and structure of the information presented. Some assistive technologies also allow users to jump directly to tables. Tables should be used for presenting tabular data only, not for layout or design. Tables that aren't formatted correctly will be difficult, if not impossible, for a screen reader user to understand, so always be sure to create your tables with proper row and column headers, header cells programmatically associated with the respective columns or rows, and providing a table caption if it would help a user understand the purpose of the table. These options should be available in your WYSIWYG table editor. All of these considerations will benefit people who use screen readers and help people with cognitive, language, or learning disabilities to understand the content of your website. Media here refers to images, videos, audio content, or any moving content on your website. Add meaningful alternative text to images. You should be able to do this in your WYSIWYG as well. Alt text is presented to screen reader users in place of images they may not be able to see. It's also what displays on the page if an image doesn't load correctly, which can benefit users on slow internet connections. It's unnecessary to start an alt text description with image of or picture of, as a screen reader will announce the image. Every image that conveys content or has a function on your website should be given meaningful alternative text. Describe the content and function of the image, but be succinct. If the image is purely decorative, you still have to add an alt tag, but leave the alt tag empty. This will ensure a screen reader will skip over the decorative image instead of announcing image. Make sure to avoid images of text, especially for a lot of text. Some screen readers limit the number of characters they'll read in alt text, and some don't let the user pause and restart mid-alt text. So a good guideline for length is about 280 characters, or the length of a tweet. If your image contains text longer than that, you risk a screen reader user either not hearing all of it or having the flow of the rest of your content being interrupted with too much extra information. Additionally, images don't scale well when zoomed in and could lead to blurry text, which will make it difficult for someone who requires screen magnification to read it. Images of logos are an exception to the no images of text rule, but they still require alt text to convey what the logo says. When you're creating your own images, whether for social media or for use on your website, keep in mind these notes about use of text, and also remember some of the principles we've talked about earlier regarding good color contrast. All your videos must have captions. Captions are the text version of speech and non-speech audio information needed to understand a video. They're displayed within the media player and are synchronized with the audio. Captions must also be human corrected. AI is getting better every day, but it's no substitute for a human. If you've ever turned on automatic captions before, you've probably seen how wildly incorrect they can be, and sometimes they can even hinder comprehension instead of helping. You should also provide transcripts of your videos and audio content. This is a written version of the audio content, occasionally including textual descriptions of visual cues as well. the transcript should be easy for your users to find. Place it right below the audio or video file, or provide a link to another page with the transcript if there isn't enough room. Captions help users who are deaf or hard of hearing, but also users who are unable to turn up the volume on the video they're watching, like someone on the bus. Transcripts can benefit everyone. A user who's blind can hear the transcript read out by a screen reader. A user who's deaf can read the transcript. A user who is deafblind can print the transcript to Braille. And a user who doesn't like watching videos can skim through the transcript to quickly absorb information. While we're talking about audio and video content, make sure you're providing a way for the user to pause, stop, or hiding moving content, which includes carousels, and ways to mute audio. Moving or auto-playing content can be incredibly distracting to users with attention limitations or people with reading or cognitive disabilities, and could even prevent them from interacting with and understanding the rest of your content entirely. Also, make sure your moving content does not contain flashes that have been known to cause seizures. WCAG defines this as, quote, anything that flashes more than 3 times in any 1 second period, or the flash is below the general flash and red flash thresholds. Finally, let's talk about forms. Identify required form fields, both in the text and in the code. This will help identify required information to a screen reader user and help with form validation. All form fields need to be labeled. These labels should be visible and remain visible at all times. Sometimes people will use placeholder text as the label or for helpful hints. And placeholder text is the light gray text inside a form field that disappears as soon as you start typing. But if those instructions disappear, a user with a cognitive disability might get confused or forget what the input is asking them for once they've started filling out the field, and they'll be unable to complete the form. Similarly, when it comes to error messages, be descriptive and provide helpful instructions on how to fix the problem. A form that doesn't submit and says only error can be confusing and frustrating for a user to understand the problem or how to fix it. A much better error message is, error, the name field cannot be left blank. Prefacing the error message with the word error helps users with cognitive disabilities, but also users who are colorblind if, for example, you're printing the error message in red. For the coders, make sure field labels are programmatically associated with their fields. And for the designers, make sure there isn't too much empty space between labels and fields. A user with cognitive disabilities might have difficulty connecting the label to the field otherwise. That was a lot, I know. There are a lot of things to consider when it comes to building an accessible website. Fortunately, WCAG is very well documented, with descriptions of each success criterion, examples for how to implement them, and explanations of how they benefit different users. When you're thinking about your website, I want you to remember the key principles of WCAG. Is it perceivable? Can a user consume the content no matter which sense they're using to do it? Is it operable? Can your website be navigated regardless of the technology used to do it? Is it understandable? Does the content make sense? Is the layout predictable and consistent? And is it robust? Have you built according to standards and specifications in a way that will stand up over time? Okay, by this point, you're probably thinking, websites don't grow on trees, and you've already got websites out there. Maybe you don't have the time or the resources to build a website from scratch right now, but you still want to make your existing site accessible. How can you remediate it? Well, everything I just covered still applies. Now, there are a lot of overlay widgets and plugins out there that claim to fix accessibility issues on your website with the click of a button. It can be tempting to go for the quick and easy fix, but please try to avoid using them. Overlay plugins and widgets often interfere with accessibility rather than improve it, and in some cases will make your website unusable with some assistive technologies. It's hard to know what these plugins are actually doing to your site if you aren't familiar with accessible coding, and if you are familiar with it, you're better off fixing your site directly. Instead of a plugin, prioritize what needs work. Test it, remediate it, rinse and repeat. Incorporate this into your regular website work cycle. Make sure all of your new content is accessible so you don't have to come back to it later. Here's how you prioritize what's already out there. The first things to address are issues that have been reported by your users. This is where you'll make the best and most immediate difference for people who are actively encountering barriers to your content. After that, focus on your most important or critical content. Do you have a form that users are required to fill out? Or do you have a page with information that almost every visitor to your site needs to understand? Look also at repeated issues prevalent across your site. Some common issues can be fixed with a single line of code, like adding underlines to all of your links, or changing the color of your text in the style sheet. In a related vein, go by ease of remediation. I know we're all busy and remediating an entire website can be a daunting prospect, but if it's a simple fix, it doesn't matter how big or small it seems. Just take a minute to add alt text to that image, or change that bold text into a proper heading. Every little bit helps. If you have old content that doesn't need to be online anymore, take it down. It's a lot faster than fixing any accessibility issues on it. And like I said, prioritize new content. As we discussed earlier, the best time to make content accessible is from the start. While we're talking about prioritizing what to remediate, this one's important enough to get its own slide. Accessible documents as a whole are outside the scope of this talk, but I would be remiss if I didn't make a plug for losing PDFs. PDFs are great for print materials, but notoriously bad for accessibility when consumed digitally. How to make a PDF accessible could easily be its own talk, so I'll just say that whenever possible, put your content on your website instead. It's virtually guaranteed to be more accessible than a PDF. If you have the budget, there are companies out there that will do accessibility assessments of your website and provide you with detailed information on how to fix the issues. There are also companies staffed by people with disabilities who use assistive technology natively and who will assess and deliver reports on the user experience of your site. Correcting captions can be super time consuming, so again, if you have the budget, I do recommend looking into vendors who will correct your captions and write transcripts for your media. Looking to the future, at some point you'll probably want to redo your website. Some of you are probably using content management systems, or you might even be working with vendors to build your sites. Whether that's true currently or will be true in the future, here are some tips to keep in mind for selecting a CMS or vendor. Do your research. Do they have an accessibility statement on their website? Do they have examples of their work or product that are accessible? Include accessibility in your contract. If you include accessibility in your contract, you can hold the vendor accountable. If your vendor is not as accessible as you'd like, request a roadmap. There's a big difference between a vendor having concrete plans to improve accessibility over time and a vendor who has no intention of ever making improvements. You can also request a voluntary product accessibility template, which is known as a VPAT, or an accessibility conformance report, or ACR. The terms are often used interchangeably and refer to a detailed accessibility report on a vendor's product. It's typically more relevant for pre-built software or applications rather than custom-built websites, but if you ask a vendor for this, they should know what you're talking about. You can learn more about VPATs at www.itic.org/policy/accessibility/VPAT. Okay, so we're testing our website and we're looking for tools to help us. What resources are available? Engage people with disabilities. While you're soliciting feedback on your website, when you're going through QA and user acceptance testing, try to include people with disabilities in your testing group. They'll be able to give you the best feedback on their experiences. Automated tools can find about 30 to 40% of accessibility errors on a website by scanning the HTML and looking for conformance errors. These plugins are run from the browser on demand and are a great way to get quick feedback on a page. Most, if not all, accessibility plugin tools share a common database of issues they check against, but the way each checker runs might be a little bit different, so it's a good habit to check a couple of them just in case. Some good free extensions include Axe DevTools by DQ, which is available at www.dq.com/axe/browser-extensions. There's also a paid version of this, which includes guided manual testing of your page. SiteImprove Accessibility Checker by SiteImprove. This one's Chrome only and is available in the Chrome Web Store. and WAVE, which stands for Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool by WebAIM. WebAIM stands for Web Accessibility in Mind and is generally a great online resource for accessibility information. You can get WAVE at wave.webaim.org/extension. There are lots of online color checkers out there. My personal favorites are the Contrast Checker and the Link Contrast Checker by WebAIM. You can find them at webaim.org/resources/contrast checker and webaim.org/resources/link contrast checker. These tools allow you to enter a foreground and background color or link, body text, and background color, and it will tell you if the contrast ratio between them, as well as whether it passes WCAG. They also have color pickers and a lightness slider, so you can experiment with different color options within the tools. There are also online tools to emulate what your website looks like to someone who is colorblind. A good one is Colorblind Web Page Filter by TopTool, available at www.toptool.com/designers/colorfilter. You can type in a URL, and it will give you a side-by-side comparison of your website and an emulation of what your page looks like with different types of red-green color blindness, blue-yellow color blindness, or in grayscale. Here's a screenshot of TopTool's color filter. On the left, we have the classic color blindness test with red or green numbers made out of dots inside circles made up of other red or green dots. Below the test is a grid showing what a set of colors looks like to people with different types of color blindness. On the right is an emulation of what the same content looks like to someone with protanopia, which is a form of red-green color blindness. The reds from the left side appear green or brown, the greens are more muted, and the numbers in the color blindness test are much more difficult, if not impossible, to distinguish. For the remaining 60% of issues that can't be found with automated checkers, you'll need to do manual testing. Many of these tests are easy. Navigate your website using only a keyboard. Are you able to do everything you need using only the keyboard? Do all elements in focus have a visual indicator to let you know where you are on the page? Does the reading order make sense? Zoom in your browser up to 400%. Is all the content still there? Is the text large and legible? Is there anything hidden, missing, or that requires you to scroll horizontally to see it? Review alt text and link text. Is the link text informative, and does it tell you where it leads out of context? Is your alt text descriptive and meaningful? Check for accurate captions and transcripts. Is it possible to understand your video content with the audio turned off? Is your transcript an accurate representation of your audio content? Finally, if you're feeling adventurous, I urge you to turn on a screen reader and listen to your website. Now, screen readers have a very steep learning curve, and I don't expect anyone to become an expert overnight. However, even if all you do is turn it on and let it read out your website, it is, if you'll forgive the expression, eye-opening. You'll learn a lot about how your website is built just by listening to it. There are some paid screen readers out there. JAWS, for example, is a popular screen reader, but it's also expensive. Thankfully, there are free options that are worth checking out. VoiceOver is built into all Apple products and can be turned on in your system accessibility preferences. Narrator is built into Windows, starting with Windows 10. You can find it in the Start menu. Another Windows option is NVDA, which stands for Non-Visual Desktop Access. You can download it for free from NV Access at www.nvaccess.org/download. On Android devices, you can use TalkBack, which is also built in. You can turn it on by pressing both volume keys for 3 seconds, by voice activation through Google Assistant, or in your device settings under Accessibility. What time is it? All right, I was hoping to give you a screen reader demo, but unfortunately we did have a lot to cover today, and looks like I've run out of time. So there are screen reader demos available on YouTube. I encourage you to watch a few, and I believe we've got a link for one that is a good place to start, available, that we will share either in chat or later along with the other links and resources. So let me just wrap up by saying that accessibility is a journey. It takes work, it takes time, and it requires ongoing effort to maintain. It isn't possible to be 100% accessible to everyone always, but there are definitive, actionable steps you can take to make your content as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. At the start of the presentation, I mentioned I'd be verbally describing everything important that was on the slides. Did it help you absorb the information more easily? Did it make it easier to understand if you had to glance away from your screen? Something I didn't mention, but maybe you noticed, is that I also chose colors with strong contrast for all of my slides. This presentation is digital, and all of the accessibility considerations we've covered today apply. I hope today's talk has helped you understand what accessibility is and why it's important, and that it encourages you to start your own accessibility journey. Thank you so much for your time. Are there any questions?
That was awesome, Thalia. So the big question that we got so far is asking for copies of the links. So yes, that will be shared.
Yes, I will compile a list of all the links in this presentation and make sure that those get sent out.
If you have any other questions, you can click on the Q&A at the bottom right, and you can type in the question there. I am not seeing any questions come in yet. Your presentation was very thorough.
There was a lot of information in there.
It was a lot of information. If there aren't any questions coming in, do you want to maybe do a quick screen reader demo?
Sure. Give me a second to fire that up. Let me stop sharing for a second. I run my screen reader on a virtual desktop, so I just need to fire that up. Okay. Share. Parallel share computer audio. All right.
And while you're working on that, before you get started, there is one question that came in.
Okay.
Says, thank you for such a great presentation. I do have a question regarding navigation. Hovering over an option and using drop-down menus, not recommended?
You can use them. You just need to make sure that there is an alternative option for people who are using keyboards. So to get technical for a moment, typically you're going to activate a hover interaction with the CSS property hover or JavaScript mouse over, I believe is the on mouse over and on mouse out. Just make sure that you also include CSS on focus or the JavaScript on click. So basically this means that you can activate it with a hover interaction using your mouse, but if someone is tabbing through with their keyboard, it will also behave as if you clicked on it with the keyboard. So it will still be able to open up without requiring that hover.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions, or should I fire up the screen reader?
Go ahead and fire up the screen reader, and if any other questions come in, I'll let you know.
Okay. I'm using NVDA, which is one of the free screen readers I mentioned earlier. You can just kind of ignore the on-screen keyboard. I need that because of my virtual desktop environment. I'm going to fire up NVDA.
NVDA Update Dialog NVDA version March 1st, 2022 is available. Welcome to NVDA Dialog. Welcome to NVDA. Most commands for control.
Okay, is that audio coming through?
Yep, loud and clear.
Perfect. There was no update when I checked literally before this webinar, so that's fun. Okay, so you'll notice that the screen reader immediately started talking. I paused the talking by hitting Control.
Use caps lock as an NVDA. Start and show this. OK, but unknown.
Okay, so I'm using the tab key to quickly go through those options, and I hit the space bar to hit OK. I am going to open up the NVDA menu.
NVDA menu. Pref Tools submenu. View log V. Speech viewer S. Unknown.
I'm going to open up the speech viewer, which just gives a visual record of everything that the screen reader says. I'm going to show you quickly. There are a whole bunch of preferences that you can set.
NVDA menu. Preferences submenu P. Settings. S. NVDA settings. General. Normal configuration. Dialog. Categories. List. General 1 of 14.
So the screen reader is telling me that I'm in a dialog window. I've got 14 categories in this preferences setting. I'm currently on general. I'm going to use my arrow key.
Speech 2 of 14.
To go down to the next one. There are, as you can probably guess by seeing 14 categories, there are a ton of ways to customize a screen reader to your preferences. Also, you might notice that there is a visual outline around where the focus currently is. Not everyone who uses a screen reader is blind. Sometimes people with low vision will use screen readers. Sometimes people with reading disabilities will use it to help them keep track of where they are and take in information. And then you can do things
Speech
like
property change voice combo box Microsoft Zira collapsed Alt plus V.
Change the voice.
Microsoft Mark. Microsoft David.
Microsoft Zira.
You can also change the rate at which it talks.
Rate slider 50 Alt plus R. 50.
Gonna crank it up.
75. 70. 77.
So you might be able to tell, I know it's just a short number, but you might be able to tell if you increase the rate, it gets much faster. Experienced screen reader users, native screen reader users frequently have the rate boosted. It's really fast, really hard to follow. I'm going to keep it
70.
a little bit lower.
50.
And then I'm going to hit escape to close out this dialog because I don't want to actually change any of these preferences.
Unknown.
We're at time. I don't know, I mean, if people want to stick on, I could quickly open up a browser to demo a couple other things, but I do want to be respectful of everyone's time.
I would say it's up to you, Thalia. I see we still have 23 people in the room. So if you want to do a quick one, I think that would be fine.
Okay, yeah, I will just quickly show you something with
Taskbar. Home Library of Congress Google Chrome. Home Library of Congress. Top of page. Banner landmark link skip to main content. Visited link Library of Congress. Search. Global search landmark filter search.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it from talking, but you can hear that as soon as I opened up Chrome, it started reading from the top, starting with that title tag, home/library or pipe Library of Congress, and then it kept going. Now if I hit tab.
Banner landmark, global search landmark, search button.
It's going to pick up where I left off it from speaking. I'm also going to quickly tab through.
Navigation, main landmark pause toggle button, play, not pressed.
Pause that slider because it's very distracting, as we mentioned earlier. And then quickly just going to show.
Elements list dialog, tree view, level 0 Library of Congress, visited 2 of 75.
So I mentioned earlier that screen reader users can jump between all the links on the page, the headings. They can also do form fields, buttons, landmarks. This is the dialog option in NVDA that is going to list all of those elements for the user. So right now it started with links. and it announced that there are 75 links on the page. And I can use the arrow key to go through.
Library Catalog 4 of 75 Level 0. Digital Collections 5 of 75 Level 0.
And I can then either activate or jump to the location where that link is on the page. I can also shift tab.
Type, grouping, links radio button checked Alt plus K.
To move between these options. So if we look at
Headings radio button checked Alt plus H.
It lists all the headings in the structured nested order that they are on the page. And then I can, I'm going to just go quickly, but.
Tree view, level 1 feature, filter by, edit, tree view, level 2 services, level 1 trending expand, level 2 top searches, level 1 your library 3 of 16.
Okay, so there are 16 headings on this page. Say I want to jump down to your library. I'm just going to hit enter.
Your library heading level 2.
Now I'm at that part of the page and I'm interested in knowing what's under the heading library. So I'm going to have NVDA start reading from here.
Heading level 2 your library. Use the largest library in the world online or in person. Link more about the library. List with 3 items. Link plan your visit. Link research centers. Link ask a librarian out of list. Heading level 2 free to use and reuse.
Okay, so that's just a super quick demo of some of the things you can do with the screen reader. I think we should still send that other YouTube link that will show a person who's actually blind using VoiceOver on a Mac. And I think that will also be a helpful demo as well. So I'm just going to quit NVDA.
Exit NVDA dialog. OK button.
And we're out. So we've got a little bit over, but I hope that demo was helpful to some people.
Thank you so much, Thalia. That was a lot of really helpful information.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem.
So thank you all to everyone for coming to today's webinar. And a survey will be going out to gather feedback on your thoughts from today's session. And if you have any other follow-up questions, feel free to send them along. Thank you very much, and I hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you.